Welcome to Resilience plus Rise, the podcast. The podcast where resilience is not just a concept, but it's a lived experience. I'm your host, Thomas Carrier. I'm a resilience coach, an ultra marathoner, and a relentless believer in the human spirit's ability to rise. This podcast is a companion to my book, Resilience plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash Your Marathon of Life
Mm.
Mindset. Each episode is raw, unfiltered dive into the stories of those who have faced life's hardest battles and they have emerged stronger. Today, I have the distinct pleasure and privilege of welcoming Mie Potter. She follows a lifelong passion to help people to feel better about themselves. So the question is, so what? There are a lot of people who do it, but
Mhm.
she does it with a vengeance after a long period of collision in 2022.
Mm.
For her, the concept is about being grateful, gratitude. Every day is a blessing. She believes all of us can change the world together. With this, welcome me.
Hey, thanks, Thomas. Thank you for this opportunity to be on your podcast because it just came about in a very God flow way because you interviewed a great friend of mine and she told you that you should interview me, and all of a sudden I get he's going to interview you, and I thought, oh, okay.
Fair enough.
And thank you for the wonderful introduction because it is actually a thing right now. There's a lot of people who say there's so many couches out there, and you know, I don't know who to choose. Or people who are coaches say, there's so many coaches now. I feel like nobody hears me, and it's all about if you're the right person for somebody, then they're going to hear you.
Of course.
Because just like Christ said, "My lambs hear my voice." You're a prophet, you're a messenger for the right person who needs to hear your message. And so instead of talking yourself into being discouraged about speaking your truth, you should just speak your truth and wait for people to listen. And you don't have to yell it, you just have to
Of
speak it,
course. Of
right?
course. Totally. That's what I always believe in. Because for me, it's the power of one. Even if one person
Yeah.
listens to this
Yes.
and they find a stirring within their heart and they feel inspired, whether to change or even if it's that allows them to get up
Hmm.
mentally or emotionally and say, okay, let me also try this out. Or let
Yeah.
me do
So
it.
amen. You are a kindred spirit.
So
So now
again, sorry,
yeah,
continue.
yeah. So I'm just going to bring up something that we had started to discuss, as we led into the podcast, because it's very much on my mind right now. Yesterday was the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombing of the city of Hiroshima. And it just snuck up on me. And it's a thing, like, we all have our way of coping. And my way of coping is to sort of like try to ignore stuff or not pay attention to things until something sort of slaps me in the face and says, "Hey, this is a thing." Because when I was younger, I actually did, um, in order not to feel the pain, I ignored things. And but I just felt disquieted. And so this week has been extra just uneasy. And a friend of mine messaged me last night and said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you that I was thinking about you today on the 80th anniversary of the dropping of the atomic bomb, and I thought, oh, that's why I feel so strange. So, and I actually ended up, after she left a message with me, posting on Facebook and LinkedIn about it. and it was more because I wanted to speak a message to the people about what we were supposed to learn about the bombing. And it's not anything about a government or whatever. It's about how we personally handle these horrible things happening to us. And that's really my what I believe that I'm here for, is to help people when they run up into their uh, so Dean Graziosi and some other people call it mess. There's other people who call it the muck, whatever. But
Mhm.
when we're in the middle of your pit, and not to go down into the pit, but how to keep yourself so that you're treading water, and that
Mhm.
you're, and so anyway, my father and his family were living in Hiroshima. And in the summer of 45, the American bombers dropped leaflets in Japanese saying, "Watch the summer skies." So my grandfather moved the entire family for the summer to a city across the bay called Miyajima. And for those of you who are familiar with the city that has the giant red gates that stick out of the bay, that's Miyajima. And it's directly across the bay from Hiroshima. So they were over there, and my father had to take the train into Hiroshima to go to school. So I think it was 2 or 3 days a week. It was likely that it was 3 days a week because it was Monday. They dropped the bomb on a Wednesday, and that was the day that we were supposed to go to school. So at any rate, they were across the bay waiting for the bombing to start on at Hiroshima. So they were cautious, and they knew something was going to happen, but they didn't, nobody knew what that bomb was, right? So at any rate, on that morning, grandma said, "Susumu, don't go to school."
Intuition.
Yeah, I mean, God,
Something about the human.
well, the
It
divine
knows that there
said,
is a inner
save
compass.
this young man, right?
Mm.
So he did not go to school. Well, he was going to obey his mother anyway, but he was just so shocked that she said that, because it would never be a thing that she would say. She'd be more like, "Susumu, hurry up with your chores because you have to get to school," right? So he stayed home, and I believe he was probably doing chores, and he heard this sound. So he looked up into the sky, and he saw the bomb exploding. So he is a Hiroshima bombing witness and a survivor. Because he was 13, he and his father walked across the bay to Hiroshima to help with the fires and the people who were injured, because they knew there were fires because they could see them across the bay. And so that's what they did, because they wanted to help the survivors. And he contracted radiation poisoning. So many other people contracted radiation poisoning in Hiroshima because they just rebuilt where everything was leveled. They didn't know about radiation, right? So, and my father actually told the story years later that they rebuilt the apartments with whatever lumber that they could find. So that was irradiated lumber. So they were continuously being poisoned. It was way before anybody knew about, you know, sealing off the area or anything. So, um, as a result, most of the members of my family who were that immediate family in Hiroshima have or had some form of radiation poisoning, just because they rebuilt in Hiroshima. And my grandfather's was actually considered to be the worst, because he was in pain and could not work a regular job from the bombing on. And what we were not aware of was that my dad walked around. We, for all we know, it could be from that time on with radiation poisoning. He actually had two diseases that were a direct result of being there and helping the people who were surviving, which he didn't know. And truly, the soldiers didn't even know who were there, because the very unfortunate thing is that there were American soldiers who were part of the occupying force who contracted radiation poisoning, who came back and ended up dying prematurely of radiation
mm,
related diseases. And, of course, you don't hear about that, right? But I know, because I've actually met a few people who are my age whose dads died in their early 50s of leukemia, and that's actually what happened to my uncle. And it was because there's a particular form of leukemia that is prevalent with survivors. So at any rate, when I did my post, my main message was, you just have to get up. No matter what happens, you have to get up and keep going. Because and my father is the perfect example of that. He, number one, he didn't even know he had a radiation disease until he had a stroke in his early 50s. And then after the fact, they diagnosed him with polycythemia vera. He had walked around probably his whole life with it, and we didn't know that. All we knew was that he had uncontrollable high blood pressure, and it was because sometimes his blood was too thin and sometimes it was too thick, and that's from the polycythemia vera. But it's not like a tale where it makes me any more special than anybody else. It's a tale that, we all have a thing, whether it's my dad surviving the bombing and losing him and losing my stepmother, and all the kinds of things that have happened to me. But you have the things that have happened to you, and we all have the things that have happened to us that are very personal and that are heavy in our hearts. And one of the business coaches that I had in the past said, use that fear, use that strong emotion to fuel you to do what you need to do. If we have strong emotions, yes, and we need a day where we have to evaluate, or we have to rest or whatever, take it, and take
true,
it often. But
true.
use that and dig deep and use that to fuel you to get your stuff done. Because we all have a mission. We're all here to do whatever it is that God intends for us to do. Whether you believe there's one thing he wants you to do, or whether he puts things out to all of us and we
Mm,
embrace whatever we hear, right? But we're
true.
all here, one, to
For a
serve
purpose, yeah.
everyone, right? Or to
True.
serve somehow. And we're all here to have our human experience, right?
Of course. So, if I could just, that
Mhm.
happened, and you're a part of that generation which carried on in its own way, whether
Mhm.
we call it as the legacy or the learnings or the challenges.
Oh, absolutely. I'm his legacy. Absolutely.
So, here, currently, you're on a pathway
Mhm.
wherein you say loud and clear, I'm over here to help. I usually say, but I've already heard this story from about the unfortunate Hiroshima
Mm.
Nagasaki bombing. Some of the brightest or the yeah, brightest of lights come from our deepest of wounds.
Mm. Absolutely. Yes.
So, what got you into the path that you are in currently?
So all the things. Most recently, I was my car was smashed by a passenger van, and I
Hmm.
had um, it will now be 2 years and 9 months. since the accident. And for
Okay.
at least 2.5 years, I was unable to work because of very severe concussion symptoms.
Okay.
And in the beginning, I also had multiple hip fractures.
Okay.
And so this gave me time to just be with God, because all the things that I was doing before I couldn't do. I didn't have the energy to attend the meetings or to do the things. Even the things that I wanted to do, I just really had to focus on healing. And in true fashion of a survivor, first I tried to plow through and do as much as I could. And then I learned that with a concussion, you actually do better if you allow yourself to heal by being more quiet and more calm. And so then I took the more calm approach, and then I actually got to even more and more messages. And so my current path, which is being determined right now, is I want to work with nonprofits. And it's a thing I had a yearning to work with nonprofits before, and some life things happened. So I got afraid of being able to support myself. So here I am back again. And the amazing way that God works is that He has showed me a path where I can do this, where I can temporarily earn some money into what will be like a more of a long-term helping of somebody else with his
Mm-hmm.
fundraisers, and also build my thing where I help nonprofits, which is absolutely fabulous. And then in between it, I'm going to be writing a few books.
Few books. It's not just a book. Few books.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Fantastic.
And it's just because ever since I was a little child, like in grade school, we used to make books. There's a group of us. We used to make books, and I it was always my dream when I got older, when the time was right, I would write some books. But I always knew that there was a time. I knew like now wasn't the time, and so I didn't act, aside from a very few periods of time where I got impatient with myself. It's always been more like in God's time. And and I thought it was actually going to be one other particular book, and now I see, or I feel, that maybe my dad's Hiroshima story is the thing that will be the first one that I write, because that has been in the plans for a little while. And it feels like the 80th anniversary and the fact that he is now passed, and I wanted to give an accounting of his story, but more that would be approachable to everyone. So it's going to be a picture book. And the reason why it is the right timing is after multiple asks, my brother has agreed to illustrate the book.
Wonderful.
So he said, no, 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 no. And then finally, this time he said yes. And to me, that's my sign that that's actually, it's
Beautiful.
time to do the
Wonderful.
book. Yeah. My brother is a fine artist, and he is a brilliant, talented illustrator. He does other things, but he's a very, very talented illustrator. So I
Very
asked him
interesting.
to make those
Very
illustrations.
interesting. Actually, that comes to the
Mhm.
next particular question is that you're writing books, so there's a lot of thoughts in your mind.
Yeah.
You're also a follower of, from your writings, I've seen that you're also a follower of James Clear.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And you have also been involved with different facets of life.
Mm,
One of the questions which I tend to ask is that it's not an advice, but as suggestion for humans, because a lot of times now when I'm hearing your story,
mhm.
I can say you had all the reasons to be in the mold of a victim or a martyr. It was a choice, and it comes back
Sure.
to the uh, statement, the beautiful statement by Viktor Frankl: between
Mm,
the stimuli and the response, there's a space, there's a gap,
mm,
and that's the
mm.
gap of our freedom. It's a
Yeah.
choice what we make. So, if I ask you, what would be the suggestions from your life lessons that you have come across to people who may be struggling, or because you're already in that space of helping people and you
Mm.
have met. So I'm not telling you to say 10 to 15,
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
if you're talking about the top 3 or 4, what pops up to your mind that you say that, hey, listen,
Yeah.
this is possible, this is
So this
possible?
is actually, I used to run a class at a local um, rehab facility for women. And
Okay.
I had a weekly class, and it was on personal development.
Okay.
And one of the things I always told the ladies, because I ran the class very much like, if people had something, if women had a thing that was really on their heart that day, I tried to steer the class, no matter what the topic was, I tried to steer it to dealing with whatever was on their heart. And the um, one of the things that at the end, when one of the ladies would get something off their chest, something that was a demon that they were battling, or something that was heavy on their heart, I would always remind them that they were God's favorite daughter, always. And, when you're at a point in your life where you feel like you're nothing because
Hmm.
of the habit that um, you're trying to break, but in truth, you have just fought a spiritual battle and you won. Like, I believe any kind of addiction is a spiritual battle. It's the enemy trying to distract us. The dark forces, a shadow, whatever. And I would always point out to them that they were victorious for today against the enemy, and they can do it again. And then the other thing what I would always remind people, and that's because I remind myself, right?
Hmm.
That all we have to do is forget that it's up to us to be strong, and lean back and lean on the divine, because we are not strong enough to resist whatever. I mean, I completely admit, like, sugar is a thing for me, which is one of the strongest addictions, right?
Hmm.
And the thing is, I'm not even doing anything to get rid of that sugar thing, because I have so many things I'm battling right now. I kind of need that crutch right now, and so I'm just going to give myself that, right? But if we lean back on whatever we regard as the thing in our universe that is stronger than us, that
Hmm.
is supporting us, it helps us to remember we're not in it by ourselves, and it helps us to remember we can't do it by ourselves. We're not supposed to do it by ourselves, whether it's with community, whether it's with your loved ones, whether you're with somebody as a life partner, or with your children, or with your mother or your grandparents, or whatever. We're meant to get through things together. And so when we isolate ourselves, that is the thing. When we isolate ourselves, then we're alone, and we're more susceptible and vulnerable to the dark. And whatever your dark is, whether it's Satan, whether it's the gods, whether, in Japan, it's all those scary gods, right?
Hmm.
It's so not to just to remind ourselves that we're not in it by ourselves. We're not in it. And even if there isn't a person in your life, because I actually uh, try to work with some veterans. So, and when you have all the strong emotions coming in from your moral injury, and your PTSD, and your um, feeling overwhelmed because suddenly you've lost all your comrades, you just remember you're not in it by yourself. And my goal about truly all of this is stopping a person from going down the path of using again, or starting to use, or doing something that's self-destructive, or ending their life because of the hopelessness, because that is actually, unfortunately, I have encountered people who have lost their children, or
Hmm.
who have lost parents to suicide because they felt so all alone. And my thing is, let's help each other to feel supported. And there's this, I mean, it's a commercial thing, but it's also a really beautiful thing. There's this t-shirt that's circulating on the internet that the front of it says "You are enough," and the back of it says, "To the person behind me, the world is much better with you in it." And this young man started this movement because his sister took her life. And it was
Wow.
his thing to help to make sure that other people didn't take their life by getting out there and just being a source of support for just an anonymous support source of support for each other. And that's sort of my thing. Like, so like everyone has a thing.
Hmm.
In the beginning of the day, I set an intention. But I don't call it an intention. It's just the thing that I want to do today, right?
Okay.
And it is to touch at least one person.
Wonderful. And as I mentioned, is that this particular conversation, if it touches one person also,
Yeah,
I think so we have
absolutely.
succeeded.
Yeah.
And a couple of things which comes up is that what you mentioned is I when I'm having the podcast, I do say it time and again, is that we all are angels with one wing. When we hold
Yes,
another,
absolutely. Yes.
that's when we fly higher.
Mm,
So we are put in this particular purpose of find out what the purpose is and reach out. Somebody else will be wanting that. And here again, when you mentioned about, see, there is a difference of being lonely and being alone. I mean,
mm,
these are things which is really eating up the world. And we, okay, there is media is there, social thing is there, but again, end of the day, the concept of loneliness and aloneness in your
yeah.
mental, physical, or
Actually,
emotion.
what? I'm sort of prompted. I was a stay-at-home mom for 15 years, and my
Mhm.
boys were my whole life. And my boys and helping my husband's career and supporting all of them was my everything.
Okay.
And when my first son graduated from high school, we actually relocated to South Carolina. So I left my baby in Michigan. And that whole time, like that whole year before we left, because we knew mm, we knew that we would need to relocate after going back and forth about relocating, probably for about 8 months. And I would tell people the thing that is killing me the most about it is leaving my baby here in Michigan. But so then now I'm fully an empty nester and I live by myself. And what I miss the most is my guys coming home from school and us having that time where they would finish practice and I would have a healthy snack for them, and it would be almost like a mini dinner, and then they would eat and then they would do homework or whatever, and then their dad would get home and then we would have another meal again. And then, and it was just this like constant activity of caring for them and having a relationship with them and hearing about their day. And, I heard about each of their day 3 separate times. And then I would convey to their dad when he got home what the guys' days were like, because by the time he got home, they were like, yeah, we told our mom. She'll tell you.
Fair enough.
But I completely missed that. I mean, even now, yeah, and it's my oldest who I raised is 30. So it's been 12 years since he's been under my roof, right? And I miss him as if it was yesterday when he was under my roof.
Whoa.
Well, and it's just because it's that and that's the thing is the other thing that I would like to help people and that I also do work around is handling our grief.
Hmm.
And we have grief about many things, right?
Of course.
Not only losing somebody, it's your son goes to school or your baby gets to be a toddler or your baby gets to be a teenager, right? And all these things are things that we grieve. And yet, I don't think in our culture we have a really great way of processing that grief. And I actually have a grief coach right now. That's one of the things that I'm doing is learning how to grieve things.
Nice.
And um, the allowing ourselves to grieve and to actually walk through it, not shove it down, but walk through it, helps us to go forward because we're just going to pick up more and more grief, right?
Hmm.
So my whole thing is when somebody loses a loved one or changes a job or relocates or whatever, I try to use the verbiage to give them, um, make sure that they are aware that it is their own personal journey, and no one has the right to tell them how to do that, right?
Beautiful, beautiful. Uh, so just being mindful of the time. Is
Mhm.
there something that you would like to say as a parting thought in our conversation?
Truly, it's more that I just really appreciate the opportunity to speak and to share, and it was completely God driven how we end up meeting.
Of
And
course.
I wish you the best in your resilience coaching because it's so needed. And
Thank you.
mine is more like God will lead me where I'm going to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, about meeting, I always say is that there are no strangers, only friends you have
Mm,
met.
yeah.
So with this thing, Mia, me, eh, sorry over that. But thank you so very much for your space and time.
Oh,
It was
thank you.
a short span, but we did have few information, or I would say some peek into the past, what's been happening around, a look into how you look into taking care of situation, and what help you are for the community and to the people around.
Well, like you said, if there's just one thing that people take away from our time together, then our job is done, right?
Fair enough. Thank you so very much. Just
Be well.
you do it just